Welcome to another episode of Joan Deserves a Musical, where I talk about my efforts to turn the life of Joan of Arc into a family-friendly animated musical. It's Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to those of you in the U.S. Today I am grateful for AI. Dun dun dun! Did AI write Kyle's script? No. And actually, something I tell people a lot, something I talk about a lot, something I maybe talk too much about when I'm telling people about this project one-on-one, is I really emphasize the fact that AI has not touched my script. It didn't generate a single word or sentence of it. It didn't edit or revise it. I have never at any point loaded my script into AI and asked for suggestions. My script is fully created by one human being, and all the input and revision advice I've gotten came from other human beings. And it's not that I'm opposed to generative AI. I think the technology is actually really cool, very exciting. But I just think there's a lot of really sensitive things happening in creative industries right now. And especially if I'm going to go out and be seeking investments and working with established professionals, I want to have as simple an answer as possible to how has AI been involved in this project. And I just want to be able to say the script has never in any way been touched by AI. I think that's gonna be best, because if parts of it have been revised or generated by AI, now we get into a lot of ownership questions and copyright issues and all kinds of things that I'd rather just avoid. That said, AI has been a tremendous support for me for the project as a whole. If we get aside from the part of the project that's writing a script, which is often what I'm tempted to think of as the project, there are other parts of the project that AI has worked on and helped me with that has been really great. Here's Grace. Say hi, Grace. So for one thing, research. This whole thing started as a research project, and initially I did it the old-fashioned way. I went to the library, I checked out books, I took notes, and I built my script based on my notes on that research. And I think that is still probably the best way to research. I think it's the most reliable, long-form academic research that's peer-reviewed and published. Like, that's the safest place to begin your history search, right? Especially with a story like Joan of Arc. You go on the internet, there's all kinds of things, and some of them are very speculative, and some of them are legend, and it's very hard to cite sources. And so for the initial drafts of the script, it was all just rooted in this library research I had done. But as time went on, I've been working on this project for a couple of years, and my memory gets hazy of what the book said about this. And like, if I went and checked out the book, I wouldn't be able to find like the specific page. I would have to reread the whole thing, right? And so I would, as I got to like my third and fourth revision of the script, I would have very, very specific questions that I wouldn't even be sure the book could answer, right? So for example, I would be curious, do we know how these two characters felt about each other? Did they ever meet in real life? And that's the sort of thing that like you could read a whole book and never find out, right? And so what I would do for questions like that in my later revisions of the script is I would go to Perplexity. Perplexity is an AI-powered search engine. In 2024, for me personally, it has replaced Google as my default search engine. I love Perplexity. I love asking it questions. I love asking it follow-up questions. I love turning on pro mode and letting it go deeper. I hope we're still recording, even though Grace just minimized everything. Yeah, did you see a family there? I think Perplexity is great. And I could ask it these ridiculously specific questions, right? Did Arthur de Richemont have any sort of history or background with Georges de Tremoille? Yeah? And it would tell me things, right? Sometimes it would come back and say, no, I couldn't find anything to suggest we know whether or not they knew each other. And sometimes it would say, like, we know from history that their paths never crossed. And sometimes it would say, like, they had a very complicated history and this and this and that. And I would click in, and some of these were speculative internet sources, right? But this was all really helpful feedback for later revisions. As I'm thinking about how do I want to portray these characters interacting with each other, I at least have something to base it on. I have ideas that are either rooted in history or like oral tradition and legend, and I can decide whether or not I want to reference those things. That's been incredibly useful. That I've been able to add so many details and things to my script that, again, I'm writing myself word by word. I'm not copying anything from Perplexity and putting it in, but I get so much context and input that I think would just be impossible to find any other way. So Perplexity for research, Fantastic. More recently, I've been using AI for a very different thing. So I met with this executive producer. In my last episode, I talked about how he explicitly advised me to go find an animation student to do some artwork for me, and I did that. But one, I mentioned he had some implicit advice for me too. He told me several times. He asked me, he said, if this is such a great idea, why hasn't it been done before? And I told him my reasons for thinking that, which, thanks to Joan Deserves a Musical, I have lots of thoughts on that, and I was able to express it pretty articulately. And he was satisfied with my answer, but he said, even though I think that's a good answer, I want you to know, if this is such a good idea, why hasn't it been done before? Is the stupidest question anyone could ever ask you, and yet I've seen stupider questions sink really good ideas, right? He said you're gonna, as you talk to investors and others, as you go to industry trade shows or however it is you get this thing funded, you're gonna find some people who just want to poke holes in your idea. You're gonna find they ask questions just for the sake of asking questions, and it's really frustrating when you're caught off guard by a stupid question. So just be ready for that. And I was like, how am I supposed to be ready for that? But what I did after a week or two of pondering on this is I started a document called Kyle's Big Book of Stupid Questions. I started with, if this is such a great idea, why hasn't it been done before? Blah, blah, blah. Isn't Joan of Arc kind of a dark story for kids? Blah, blah, blah. You know, these things I have lots of thoughts on. And I came up with like those two questions, and I was sort of stuck. I was like, how can I generate more questions? I was like, I bet this is a thing you can use AI for. So I went to Claude by Anthropic. I've heard great things about it. This is the first time I've ever used it. And I gave Claude a pretty long prompt. I said, you know, I am creating an animated musical about Joan of Arc. I want it to be family friendly. All the information, targeting these demographics, you know, look and feel like classic Disney. I said, I then went over to Perplexity and I was like, what kind of people invest in movies? And it was like, here are 5 types of people that invest in independent films. One are like film investors. One are like angel investors. One are just art enthusiasts. One are, you know, there were these 5 different personas. And so I told Claude, you may be any one of these 5 personas. And I described them to Claude. And I said, you may be interested in this field, in this project, and asking sincere questions to understand it better and decide whether or not to invest. Or you might just be trying to make me go away and you're asking stupid questions to trip me up. Give me a mix of both. And Claude gave me like 10 questions and I copied them into my document. And then I went back in and I was like, give me stupider questions. And Claude kind of pushed back. He's like, I think investors would be more professional than this, but here are some extremely stupid questions for you. And I'd be like, ask me more serious questions. And then like, I would choose questions. I'd be like, if I responded to that question with this answer, what follow-up questions would you have? And I have now created this document. I'm not going to show it to you, unfortunately, because it mentions a lot of names of things and people I'm working with that I'm not sure I should be sharing. But here are the personas. For the professional film investor, I've got 21 questions. For the private/angel investor, I've got 8 questions. For the glamour-seeking investor, it's kind of a funny persona, I've got 9 questions. For the art patron, I've got 7 questions. And then I have this category called really stupid questions. I pushed Claude really hard, and it gave me 10 questions. And let me just read some of these to you. I really like them. Like, do you think little boys will want to watch a movie about a girl? That is the sort of thing that someone will think of and maybe be sincere in asking it. But it's stupid because, like, Disney has built a whole career on princesses, right? And they have done fine. Here's a good one. Can't you make Joan of Arc sexier to appeal to a broader audience? What? Why not just another princess movie? Those make money. Wouldn't it be better if Joan had a cute animal sidekick, like a talking horse or something? History is boring. Can't you just make up a story? Here's my favorite one. My favorite stupid question from Claude. How about we change it to Joan of Arkansas and make it about a modern day girl instead? Right? Like, this is great, and I've been able to write paragraphs in response to all these questions, and it's not that I think anyone, when I go out seeking investment, is going to say, how about we change it to Joan of Arkansas, right? But, like, just to be able to engage with questions and have this practice of being like, what catches me off guard? What am I comfortable answering? And have it all documented. I have 9 single-space pages of questions and answers. And some of these, they are really serious questions. What's your budget for this production? Who are the key creative talents attached to this project? How do you plan to market this film to both children and adults? Have you secured any pre-sales or distribution deals? What? Like, that's a thing I need to go back to the studio and ask, what does this mean? What's your plan for distribution? What's your strategy for international markets, particularly non-Christian countries? These are helpful things that I have really had to spend a lot of time thinking about and investing in. And so I am really grateful for AI, not because it generates my content, but because it can generate questions that force me to make my content better. It can generate things to help me practice my pitch, and it can generate research and insights that give more context to the work I'm doing, whether that is writing the script or trying to understand potential investors I might talk to. So that's how I've been using AI. I think it's a really great lesson in the power of this new technology. People are worried about content being generated by AI and it not being good, or it's stealing copyrighted material, or ownership being unclear, or whatever. And I have avoided all of that, and yet I've still greatly benefited from AI's ability to produce thoughtful questions and insightful insights. And so those are my thoughts on AI. Hope you enjoy it. And I have more things I want to tell you, so hopefully we'll be back on the weekly cadence for a little bit.